What if I told you the average consultant spends between 8 and 10 hours a month just creating invoices and tracking down payments? Would you believe me if I said that whole process could be automated from the start and work completely automated while you sleep? Here's what's absolutely killing professional services as of right now. The biggest issue is this billing black hole. You do great work for clients and you are spending hours and hours doing manual searching through timetables or searching through time tracking apps, creating your rate, and then also making sure that you didn't miss anything along the way and getting those invoices out to your clients so you can finally be paid. Every consultant or professional service offerer has lost on billable time just because they couldn't keep track of it, number one. Number two, they didn't get their invoices correctly rated and they didn't get the invoices out in time for the client to actually pay them what they needed to be paid. The next thing is that the invoices, once they get sent out, you hear crickets. There's no sort of follow-up on payments. There's no sort of tracking on the back end. And also, those payments are just delayed too long for you to see that revenue quickly. So what I see happen all the time is that work gets done in January, February, and these companies either never pay out the actual professional servicer or they get paid out next quarter or a quarter from now, which never works for tracking revenue and also keeping up with expenses and just running your business efficiently. Hi, I'm Jackson Rose from JR Automations, and I'm building right now a professional services time tracking and billing automation that will save consultants and professional servicers tons of time every month and making sure they get paid on time and paid the correct amount every time. All right, so here's my professional services time tracking and billing workflow. And I know it looks kind of different from my other workflows. However, think of this as a straight line workflow from start to finish. But I wanted to break it up into pieces and kind of stagger how we look at this different workflow in pieces. So we're first going to look at where the actual billing hours are getting recorded and where they're being kept. Then we're alerting a team, for instance, like an accounts receivable team, if this is a big professional services firm, of, okay, we're starting to bill this client. And then the middle piece is the actual building the customer if they don't exist yet, and then building the invoices within Stripe, which that's the payment platform I'm using today in this automation. And then we're alerting the person that we have sent an invoice. So we're alerting the client that we've sent an invoice. We're updating the time entries with parameters that align with when it was actually sent. And then finally, we're alerting the accounts receivable team that the invoice has actually been sent. So I like how this automation breaks down. It's relatively simple compared to my other ones, but yet it's very powerful in tracking everything. It's very powerful in sending out invoices and then following up with invoices to the clients to let them know, hey, we just sent out an invoice. But I wanted to let you know that you have an opportunity to save your team 10, 20, 30, maybe even 40 hours every week or month just from AI systems and automation. My name is Jackson. I run a consulting firm for AI, which is called Proverb AI Consulting. What we do is we go into businesses, we figure out where AI or AI automation systems can be set up to help them work faster, work easier, and allow them to work better without spending more money. And what I have specially for everyone today is an AI readiness review. It's completely free. All it does is figure out, hey, you have a business, you have departments, what pieces in your business can be automated right now with the largest return on investment and saving your company the most money. So if you're interested in finding that out for you, yourself, your business, or the department you work for, please click the link in my description, go to my website, and fill out this free AI readiness review. Figure out if you're actually ready for AI. All right, let's get back to the video. All right, so let's start with this first piece. As you can see, I am having it as a daily billing check. Now, I'm using 4 different systems in this, actually 5. I'm using Supabase to track time entries. I'm using Slack to actually notify accounts receivable. I'm using Stripe as a native node. And then I'm using Gmail as the way to contact or follow up with the actual client to pay off their invoice. So let's start with what we're working on here. So we have a schedule trigger that's going to knock everything off on a daily basis. So I think this is good to be tracking on a daily basis, especially if you're a big professional services firm, it's very important to be tracking daily because, if you have a lot of clients out there, it's very difficult to think about it project by project. What you really want to think about it is hour by hour, which is way more efficient. And also, you're not going to miss any time, if you have different consultants or different lawyers working at a time basis, it's way easier to track on a daily basis. Now, if you're a smaller firm, it might be easier to actually track on a weekly basis, especially if you're not putting out a ton of hours. Maybe you're an individual consultant. Then you could go weekly. You could go even bi-weekly, perhaps. But for this specific one, I'm going on a daily basis. And then we're getting actually unbilled time entries from Supabase. And I'm going to show you that right now. All right, so I'm currently in my table editor in Supabase, and as you can see, I have different fields set up. Now, you can use this from a lot of different time tracking apps. For instance, if you're a consulting firm that uses time tracking apps, it would be really easy to hook up a Postgres query to run this and just track everything within a timesheet. But right now I have it just as sample data where we're using different things like local dentist practice, Green Energy Co., a bunch of different companies in here, but we're all tracking it on a client email, and Supabase can be really secure. So there's no problem, keeping client data or any sort of thing like that in here for billable hours or anything like that. It's super efficient. But I have different fields in here that are going to be tracked, but also be adjusted. So as you can see here, I have invoice number, I have Stripe invoice ID, I have billed date. So these are null right now. And a lot of them are null, or all of them are null, because we are going to actually insert this when we update the Supabase table. And you'll see that later in the automation when I actually run it fully, but these will actually be filled in because of the automation running. So let's keep that in mind right now. And from a time standpoint, we have hourly rate and task description that will all be tracked and be put into Slack. So we can know exactly what services were provided, our hourly rate for that client. Yeah, so I have in duration hours, hourly rate, everything here so we can track it specifically, which is really good because we want to make sure that everything gets tracked specifically and gets tracked efficiently because we want to make sure that we're getting paid right. All right, so yeah, I just showed you the Supabase, the table that we're actually referencing, and I'm going to click into this just to show you what's going on. So in the Supabase get unbilled time entries, we're getting all the entries from that Supabase table, and we're going to do an analysis on it. But we're going to make sure that we're only taking in analysis and information that will be used to not only bill or set up a billing for that client and also set up an invoice. So that's what this node is doing. And I'll show you a little bit, but I want to make this as basic as possible because I know that N8N is a super heavy no-code platform, and I don't want to overwhelm anybody that's just starting out or maybe doesn't have any code background about what this is. But essentially, and this will also be in the description, but essentially this is just tracking all the time entries. It's summing them up, it's creating groups like you see here. So it's grouping all the different entries, so those would be the rows in the table, and matching them up with the client name. Then it's making a task description with all that, summing up all the total hours, total amount, and then the entry count of how many times those people have actually worked with us, and it's summing up their hours that we've worked for them, and then it's making a small description. All right, so moving on. Once we've actually analyzed all the time data by client, we then alert the accounts receivable in Slack. And basically this is just a notification being sent to the Slack team saying, hey, we're currently starting to bill these clients. Keep a heads up for invoices, and maybe you have a protocol with accounts receivable that says, hey, if they haven't paid within this many amount of days, reach out to them, notify them that, you need to be paid and the billing time has been passed, and maybe incurring a late fee. Who knows? For some reason in the Stripe account, if you're using Stripe, I think is a great platform to use. I'm sure there's other ones, but I think Stripe is the easiest. It has the best API integration, and it's what I use and what I like to use. So Stripe basically has an account set up, and I've set up this one with a sandbox test account, but in essence, what I'm trying to do and trying to accomplish is I'm trying to create customers within Stripe, and then I'm trying to create invoices with items that are specific to that client. So, for instance, if I'm taking in all these new clients, right, and I don't want to do all the setting up of the clients in Stripe, I can use an in automation to do that. After that, using all the information from Supabase, I am using that customer that we just created to create a instance of an invoice item. So if you've ever seen like an invoice, right? It usually has, who the invoice is from, and then it has, the customer, being charged or whatever, and their like address, phone number, email, stuff like that. And then you'll see like an itemized tab that says like, 4 hours worked at $150 an hour, and this is the total. And the name that says like, or description that says like professional services or consultation, something like that. Well, this is essentially what is being built in the back end for that invoice that will be sent out. And then the next one is literally just creating the invoice. So if I click into here, it's using that invoice item and using that customer and creating an invoice that meshes the two together. So it's creating that invoice instance in Stripe. So whatever this spits out, it'll spit out an ID for an invoice, and then all we have to do is finalize that invoice in this HTTP node that finishes everything off. So before I went any further into this next piece, I wanted to show you what the Stripe sandbox looks like for me on my end. So as you can see, I don't have any totals, right? I don't have any balances because this is just a sandbox account. Like I haven't created any transactions. I don't have any customers in here yet. I have created some instances of invoices just for testing purposes, but you're gonna see when I move to the next step of actually like running the automation, I'm gonna show you step by step of what's happening as it's running. And you can see that, everything's being built out, and it's being built out in cohesion. All right, so now we're in this final piece here that basically says that the invoice has been sent, and this will be in email form, and I'll show you what the HTML looks like once I actually run it. And then we're marking and updating Supabase entries as billed. And we're updating the date that it's billed, we're updating if it's true or false, because the billed column is a Boolean effect. So it's either true or false. And then finally, the alert team, which says we have sent the invoice out to this client. All right, so I just wanted to quickly go inside Gmail and show you what's going on. But this is like a nice HTML formatted Gmail message. And I'll quickly go into the HTML here, but essentially it's just saying, hey, this is what we're billing you for. This is the breakdown of everything. This is the date, 30 days to pay, things like that. And it's just kind of like another notification that if you didn't receive the Stripe invoice specifically, you should go look for it. Or maybe it's just, a good way to say, hey, we did send out an invoice, but if you didn't receive it or if there was a problem with the invoice being sent out, this is what it is. All right, so I'm gonna officially run this automation and show you guys exactly what's happening on the back end once it's actually completed running. All right, here I go, executing it now. All right, so what it's doing is it's unbilling time entries, getting that, analyzing the data, alerting the team, accounts receivable, that billing's starting, and then creating the customer, creating the invoice, finalizing the invoice, and then ultimately sending that email follow-up, and then replacing those fields in the Supabase table, and then finally alerting the accounts receivable team that the invoice has been actually sent. Now that it's completed running, let's go look at every specific thing that has been updated from the past. So if you remember correctly, we started with this table here. And if I move over here, if you remember, we had invoice numbers as all null, we had Stripe invoice IDs as null, and then build dates as null as well. As you notice though, that these still say null, the ones that didn't get updated because they were already true and they had already been paid off. So billable equals false because they're pro bono. So all those are updated in Supabase. All right, so now we're in Slack, and as you can see, the JR Automations billing has been saying it's been giving notifications of all these different things. Had billing process initiated, so it's been updating all these different companies that have been clients in the past. So that's all good. That's showing updates. So through one of my test emails that I put in the invoice gathering as a client, this is what the client would actually be receiving email-wise, which is just saying, this is our dates, invoice-wise, this is the hours that we billed you for, 2-time entries. Because it's pro bono, we didn't charge anything. If you remember earlier when we didn't have any of these customers actually built into the Stripe sandbox, As you can see, these clients are now in it with their customer name and then their email and then all the stuff that they've actually been paid for or not paid for, depending on where they are in the process of actually being billed. If we hopped over to invoices, as you can see, it has created these invoices that are all open now, ranging anywhere from $2,200 or $2,250 to $813 for each client that we had. If we hop into one of these specific open invoices, you can see the details, but it says professional services, 2 time entries, 10 hours total. Yeah, and then it gives all the information, but this is what they would receive in terms of information. They would be able to pay it through different payment methods as well. So I hope everybody really liked this automation. I think it's powerful for any sort of professional service business that is spending, anywhere from 8 to 10 hours a month just getting invoices sorted, getting invoices sent out, and then just keeping up and following up with invoices, because making sure that you have consistent revenue and it doesn't have a huge lag effect from actually sending out an invoice to actually receiving payment. That's huge for a business, because businesses have bills to pay, they have employees to pay, and it's easily trackable through all these different things in platforms like Supabase, but also being easily processed through invoicing with things like Stripe. So if you like these kind of automations, if you like seeing stuff like this, please subscribe to my channel. Also, go into the comments and comment what you guys want to see, because I'd love to start doing things that are suggested to me. I know a lot of people, work internally on businesses, work in departments, teams, even own their own business. So I want to hear what you guys like to do. I want to hear what could be automated within your life or within your business, and hopefully I can build it for you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next week.